when I was asked to kind of come here and talk, it was actually really nice for me to sort of be able to reflect over my many years as to sort of what's led me to here today. And I wanted to start back in 1985, when I was, like you, just starting college and just getting my, well, they were called O-levels then, so I was getting my equivalent of your GCSE results. And I was going to go off and study A-level geography, biology and economics. And my O-level results came back, and I looked down at them, and they weren't what I expected or what I was hoping to get. And in particular, my geography O-level, I got an E. Now, I was really, really gutted, because geography was like the one subject that I really, really loved. And I had worked really hard, I had my study plan in place, my revision timetable nailed. And when I sat down in that exam hall and I opened that paper, it was the perfect paper for me. Every question I knew the answer to. The essay questions that I had been rehearsing and going over and over again came up. So when I saw my E on my results, I was really confused. And I guess I did that thing that sometimes, I don't know if any of you do, but you kind of keep looking, thinking, no, it's going to say the A in a minute, it's going to change. And it didn't. And my father asked me, because he could see that I couldn't make sense of this, he asked me if I wanted to challenge the results and get it remarked. And I kind of, in some respects, I guess I didn't want to see that it was definitely an E. But I also thought, well, I can't change it. I can't change the past. Something went wrong on the day, and I don't know what. So I couldn't change the past, but I could determine where I went from here, and I could determine what choices I made and how I made use of that particular failure. Now, obviously, the college was telling me, well, clearly you can't study the A-level or geography because you've got an E in the O-level. But I didn't accept that. I went and met with the head of geography and I said, look, it shouldn't have happened, and I don't know why, and I'm confused, but I knew that paper inside out, and I know I gave the answers right. Something went wrong on the day. I asked her to give me 1 month where I would prove that I could take this A-level course, and if I couldn't, I would bow out gracefully, and I'd walk away and drop the subject. 2 years later, I'm there, opening up my A-level results. And I get my A. I get my A for geography A-level. So I'm kind of sharing, it seems quite significant to share this with you today, especially as you're getting your results. And some of you may not have got the results like I didn't. I didn't get those results that I'd spent, 2 years working really hard towards. But I realised it didn't really matter. It was what I did with it. And it was, I guess, my first significant failure as a young adult where I had to make the decision. I had to decide, was I going to let that affect me and crumble and, okay, put my hands up and say, I'm not going to study geography. Clearly, I wasn't as good as I thought I was. Or was I going to take action and determine where I went next? Failure hurts. It's a really emotional response you get when you fail. And it's something that I think is really, really important. And just with the work that we're doing in education, I'm realising that there's a growing fear around failure. And I really, really encourage you all, especially those of you that have got all those A stars, to go out there and start failing. And I know that probably you might be sitting there going, what? Hold on a minute. But it's about building up that emotional resilience that you're going to need, because believe me, when you step out into that world of work, you are going to start failing. Often, on a daily basis, you're going to start making mistakes, some small and some big. And you've got to have that emotional resilience to sort of carry you through. Failure doesn't have to limit our choices, and I learned that when I got those results for my O-levels. I'm going to now fast forward 23 years to what I kind of have been reflecting was probably one of my most pivotal moments in my career that's kind of led me to here today. And it's also quite nice to share this because there's some people in the room who were a part of that experience with me. Ollie Maxwell and Joey Dawson, who were there at the school that my daughter was, and I found myself being the chair of the PTA. And the head teacher there asked me if I would hire in a circus as a fundraiser. So, and I looked into this, and she'd given me the name of this group that would come in and, kind of entertain the kids, and we'd sell them tickets. It was going to cost £7,000 to bring them in, and all they were going to do was work with the kids for 3 days, and there was 106 kids in the school, and they could probably have about 30 that they could work with. Now I knew that a parent had joined the school community, Emmeline Maxwell over there, who was trained in drama and also had some circus skills up her bag, some clowning and some juggling skills. I didn't really know her, but I had met her, so I went up to her and I said, look, Emmeline, why don't we put on the circus? Why don't we, as a group of parents, come together and harness all those skills and those hidden talents within the parent base, and we will train the children, and they will be the circus. She agreed. Thank you, Emmeline. And there was another parent who strangely and coincidentally also happens to have a child here at Ansford Academy, Liz Bradwell. Her daughter's in Year 10. And she came up and said, I hear you're kind of planning this circus, and you're going to train all the children, and you're going to put on this sort of big performance. She said, I used to do event planning. I used to transform spaces like this hall into the most incredible, undersea worlds or experiences that you could, that would enhance the room for clubs like Ministry of Sound. I could come in and I could help them do the costumes and the props. So the three of us kind of got together and went, okay, and it kind of snowballed from there. Now, one of my strengths, but it's kind of also one of my curses, especially for those people who work with me, is that I think big, okay? I don't like to put boundaries. Like Shona said, I don't like to think that anything is impossible. And I think if you think big and you think out here, you can always bring it back down, small. But if you start small, believe me, it's so much harder to push out to the outer edges. So we were thinking big, and in fact, I remember sitting with three of us. We met with someone from Circle Media, the education director, and to get some advice. And he said, so let me get this straight. The three of you are mothers of these children. You're going to train 106 kids, and you're going to put on a 90-minute show in a big top to an audience of 300. And we kind of naively sat there and went, yeah. And he just looked at us, didn't he, Emily? And he looked at us and he said, you're crazy. And it was kind of like, I think it was the naivety, and this is the thing I'd really sort of say to you, being young, you don't know, or you don't necessarily see all those obstacles, and that's a positive thing. I think if we'd known what we were getting into, we'd have probably said, yeah, you're right, let's just go and hire that organisation, that can come in and do it for us. But we did. We raised £8,000, so we were actually also able to hire in a trapeze artist, a silks artist, and a slack-wire. And we trained over the course of 6 months 106 kids to perform. Ollie, you did some fantastic clowning. Joey, you were amazing on that trapeze, doing this routine, beaming, smiling, high up in the air. And it was at that moment, I guess, that lots of things in my career, I'd been working in publishing, in international relations, I'd been a filmmaker. But it was sitting backstage after the first or the second performance, and me, Emily and Liz, we kind of, that feeling when you're slightly giddy that you kind of can't quite believe something's just happened, and we were kind of there going, did we pull it off? We just pulled it off. And it was, for me, it was that bringing together of everything, I guess, that I'd been learning up to that point, and the strengths and the core of what made me me. And it was, it was a really significant moment. But also, what I saw children come alive. That in my role as a governor, we had been sort of discussing, behavioural problems or anger issues, and I didn't see any of that. What I saw was children and their lights were going on, and they were kind of really stepping up to that challenge, and they were crashing through those boundaries. that have perhaps been placed around them through the glass ceiling of what sometimes can be our education system. I'm now going to rewind 36 years, back to when I was in year 7. And that was the last time I remember feeling that feeling sitting backstage, that I was me and I was kind of drawing on all the things that made me passionate about things, that switched on my lights, and that gave me purpose. And it was an interform drama competition. And I just loved it. I kind of went home and I wrote the script, and I came back in and I kind of galvanised my form group to kind of put this play together. But it never happened again throughout my education. And there I was now sitting age 40, experiencing that same feeling. And I guess what this has made me sort of realise is that I think there's room for academic success. But there's also room for so much more to be going on in our children's lives and in your lives when you're going through education. And that's what's really exciting about working and collaborating here with Ansford Academy, is trying to bring in that element where you can find out really what it is that makes you tick and what switches on your lights. So I'm going to just sort of wrap up really with just 3 bits of advice that I'd like to sort of give you. The first that is failure is inevitable, and many of you may not have yet experienced it, especially if you've been kind of, finding it relatively easy to get those A's. But it is inevitable, and when you enter the world of work, it will happen. So start building up that resilience. Start pushing yourself much further than you may have done before, and start going out to the edges of your ability. We have a saying in Explorium, fail fast and fail forward. Just try things that you don't know that you can achieve, because what's the worst that can happen? And in fact, that was the advice Seb, my son, gave me when I was nervous about coming up here to do the speech. He's like, Mum, what's the worst that can happen? So thanks, Seb. My second bit of advice is I really want you to go off and explore what you're passionate about. And that's very different to what you might be good at. You might be good at a particular subject. You might be amazing at singing, like you girls who have sung here tonight. But what are you really passionate about? What would you love to wake up every morning to get up and go and do? And I really urge you to start exploring that and spending some time outside of your academic studies searching for what that might be. And finally, I really want you to start your quest to find out your purpose. I found my purpose backstage at that circus at age 40. And I've had a great life. I've really enjoyed every stage of my career because I've carved it out. I've gone after what I've wanted to do. But when you find your passion and you match that with your purpose, everything else makes sense. Thank you.